We have a Patreon poll topic, don't we? We also have a Patreon itself.
We do. Patreon.com/CU podcast. You go, you do the money thing. We give you the content.
You do the money thing?
We give you the content. So patreon.com. If you support us, we give you access to the full video podcast. Full video podcast. Hangouts once a month with moi. Just did that last week. It was a good time.
It went swimmingly, I heard.
Good time. It was great. We also let you vote in these poll topics.
You also do a writing?
I do a writing. I got to do one this week. Yeah.
So two strong choices. It's hard to think of three choices every week. I know people on the Patreon get upset at us.
Oh my God, it's so hard.
The third one always gets only 15% anyway. Two solid choices. Would a monetary or other indicator cause you to sell your game collection? 26% only. And in first place, didn't expect us to get this much of a vote. Have you ever forced yourself to like a video game? At 74%. Ian, I know there's probably one or two in my head that you've forced yourself to like, including a Christmas present. We can go over those real quickly, but there's probably others as well.
Yeah. So the number one game, and this one's fresh in my head, and honestly, with the all the recent talk about Nintendo and their IPs and shit that we've done, it really was at the front of my mind. I spent 2 or 3 days desperately trying to like Star Fox Zero. I tried.
Never played it.
Because I like rail shooters. I like the basic idea of Star Fox. Zooming around, you're a fox, you got rabbit friends, good shit. Blow stuff up.
Rabbit friends, okay.
You got a rabbit friend in Star Fox?
You get one, right?
There might be more than one in the world.
Okay, the animal thing's an afterthought to that game, but okay.
I mean, I enjoy it.
Furry shooter.
So I really wanted to enjoy Star Fox Zero, but the way that game made you use various motion controls and gyro controls for things was just not fun. Even as I found myself getting used to the controls, I saw a lot of people online that are like, it's not bad once you get used to the controls. No, but the controls are just so flagrantly fucking awful and annoying to use that even when I got used to them, the game was not fun because of the controls. It wasn't one of those things where I could get used to it and overlook it. I just stopped playing. And after like 3 days, after trying so hard, I stopped and I didn't go back. But I really tried. I wanted to like it. That the end of that first day, I was like, yeah, this game's not so bad. And then I sobbed deeply into, the pillow. But yeah, it really was.
Did Spike console you?
Yeah, Spike consoled me.
Put a paw on your shoulder.
Yes. So
did you sell the game or you kept it?
I think I still have it because it's just like what I would have gotten back for. I don't know. I think I told myself in my head that I was going to try. I was going to try desperately
That's Ian in the corner.
To try. I was going to try again.
Ian in the spotlight playing Star Fox Zero.
So I had a couple others though that I'm going to pull up.
Well, you can get it brand new still for $22.
Yeah, I mean, no one needs that game.
There's one seller on eBay that has sold 2,200 of them. Probably like a liquidator. So
another one that I really tried to force myself to like was Destiny. I like the idea of Destiny. I know games as services now is something that everyone hates, and no one wants their favorite franchise to turn into a games as a service, and I get it. But when Destiny came out, I was interested in it. I do like to play the occasional first-person shooter, and I'm not big on the military-themed stuff. So seeing a sci-fi shooter that was going to be, massively multiplayer, I bought into it, and I couldn't get into it.
With heavy RPG elements.
Yeah, with heavy RPG elements. On paper, it really sounds like a type of game that I should love. So not only did I buy, this is, I think, more of a proper example than Star Fox, because not only did I buy into Destiny and try to like Destiny, when Destiny 2 came out, I bought into Destiny 2 and tried again, because it really just seems like something that should line up for me and that I should enjoy. But I bounced off of it both times. I could not stick with it. What about you?
Okay.
And then, of course, yes, Home Alone 2, Christmas. Yes. I really desperately tried to like that game.
I'll run through my APOGs, Pat Original games that I had, because I brought them up. God, if you saw my Christmas video, go watch it. It goes over some of the ones I bought for Christmas. I regretted a lot of those. Spider-Man and X-Men and Arcade Revenge. Boy, did I force myself to enjoy that game. Remember. Yeah. Remember, when I was a kid, middle class, 2 cars, 2 TVs, no HBO, regular cable. Still didn't have touch tone, so we didn't have a huge amount of money. I got video games like maybe 3 times a year if I didn't have my own money. Like birthday, get 1, maybe. Christmas, get 1 or 2, and then maybe you're with your mom, and then some guy near the state prison you buy one from because it maybe fell the back of the truck. I actually enjoyed Jaws. I always liked Jaws. That's not one I forced myself to like. I always liked Jaws, even as a kid. I got into it. I didn't love it, but I was like, okay, this isn't bad. For $10, it's good.
It's not awful.
No, it's 3 stars, I think, according to a certain NES guide.
It's very simple, but it's fun.
There's an interesting concept. There's a slight RPG system to this game. An action. It's interesting. What the fuck else are you going to do with Jaws on the NES? Let's be honest. What are you going to do? A platformer? Or you're the fucking sheriff platforming around the water? Anyway, so Three Stooges, I definitely forced myself to like that game as a kid. I appreciate that game now more because at the time, obviously didn't know it was an Amiga and a computer game. No one knew that. The mini game, a collection of mini games wasn't really a known thing to probably most children, especially on a console. Like, what the hell is this? So I don't know what I was expecting, 8-9-year-old Pat, but I was not expecting a collection of mini games, and it threw me off. Or I was like, wow, what is this? This is not fun. These are quick games and they're over in a minute. And the structure of the game is not something that I enjoyed. Again, I had to get used to it. And I still played the game a lot because I had to, because you didn't have a lot of games. That's when I really forced myself to like, and now I look at it a lot more fondly because of how well it did that IP versus even just the gameplay mechanics, which are fine. They're not great, but I enjoyed it a lot more because it stays true to the Three Stooges. Sure. And that's one of the reasons I got into YouTube to begin with, because someone trashing that game in particular, not understanding that it was based upon, at that time, a fucking 50 to 60-year-old property and not getting that whole aspect of it. Right. That video is probably still on YouTube. So that was one, for sure. I forced myself to enjoy a lot of computer games because I started to buy a lot of computer games in the 90s. You would even go to like fucking BJ's Wholesale Club, and there'd be like cheap computer game packs where they'd put together awful games, and it'd be like 3 for $15. I remember buying a fighting game. I should have looked beforehand. A 1-on-1 fighting game, probably like 94. That was on a CD-ROM, and it was fucking terrible. I'll never forget it because it was just 2 guys. The art was just 2 guys without a shirt off, looked like wrestlers looking at each other. A photograph of them. I was like, oh, okay, I'll try this, and it was terrible. But the other games that I'd bought that I remember I forced myself to like was stuff that was like either cheaper or was titillating, pardon the pun. Especially a game like Noctropolis, which was not a bad game. Published by EA. It takes place where like you're sucked into the comic book that you're writing. You become the superhero in the game, and you have to solve a crime. It's point and click. It's point and click puzzle solving. But
God, how did I remember that box so perfectly? I must have just seen it like everywhere.
Because the artwork focuses on blondes with boobs. That's basically why I bought it when I was like 15. So it was on sale at Computer City. It was like a greatest hits. EA had their gold minier box, not mini box, smaller box packs, slimmer box packs. They would do like other publishers would also do like, I think like Privateer had like their re-release a few years later. There'd be like $15 games. Sure. So that's a bargain at the time. So I pick up Noctropolis. I look in the back, and the back of the box shows a digitized real woman up to almost like you can almost see her nipples. And when you're like 15. You're like, oh my God, how is this for sale? I'm going to buy a game that should be rated, M for mature. Because there is a couple times where you see a naked woman in that game. There's like 2 or 3 times where there's like scantily clad or naked women. And I got away with it. So I buy this game, and I couldn't figure out the puzzles. I couldn't even get to that part of the game. So EA, you got me. You hooked, you hooked a hormonal Pat in high school right there, 15-year-old Pat. I couldn't even get to the part to enjoy that. I think I got like maybe I looked years later at like an online playthrough. I might have got like 25% through the game.
So not even.
I couldn't figure out the puzzles. Far. So that was a regret, for sure. I regretted. I just didn't like it. The layout. Maybe go back. Star Wars Galaxies, which was like the first like sort of like real-time strategy Star Wars game. That's from the late 90s. Just never got into it. I got it, and I played almost all the Star Wars computer games. I was a huge Star Wars nerd. Come on, back then I just never got into it. One that is either forced myself to like until I got sick of it was The Sims. The first Sims was huge when that came out. That was like what, 99? The first Sims, without looking it up, and everyone was playing it in college. Everyone loved it, and I get the game, maybe not buying it. I don't remember. And I play this game, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This hasn't been done before. You're simulating a person walking around, and it's goofy. And after a week, I sort of snapped out of it. Played it a lot that first week. I mean, probably a few dozen hours in a week or 2 weeks at college. All of a sudden, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? This is insane. I'm like, I got a life to live. I'm trying to live someone else's life. And having this person go to the bathroom and take a piss and make food. It's like, what am I doing? And so I think I liked it, and then like I got caught in the trap of the cycle of the game and got out of it. So that one's 50-50 whether or not I forced myself to like it or just got semi-addicted and realized I was getting addicted to a weird experience and got out of it. Because that was like also the forefront of like, MMORPGs, like sort of like the late 90s, which I never got into because I was afraid to get addicted to games. I don't like games I can get easily addicted to. So maybe that's why that one is like that. As well. In terms of, going back to Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge, the reason I got that game was because, well, Spider-Man Arcade at the time, the beat 'em up, X-Men Arcade beat 'em up. These are great games. And I don't know why. I mean, I wasn't super young. That game came out, that was an earlier Super Nintendo game that came out like 92. So I was like 12. So I have my wits about me probably to know that this is not the arcade games, but I will never get the arcade games. So I'll get this. This is the second best thing. It's not the second best thing. It's not even the third best thing. It's a seriously flawed game. It's not a horrible game, but it's not a good game. I think I rated it average in a certain Super Nintendo guidebook. But boy, did I force myself to like that game and to beat that game. That's a tough, unforgiving experience, that game.
Yeah.
The storm levels, for God's sake. You're not even flying around. You're underwater. Then at the end of the game, you can use her a little bit. It's a weird fucking game. And I read into the backstory where they basically had to like throw out a lot of stuff and redo things. So it sounded like it was a mess behind the scenes. But that game was not up to my expectations. So I forced myself to like that one. I forced myself to like NHL Stanley Cup.
Ooh.
I was like, oh, I just got NHL 93 in the Super Nintendo. Good game. All the NHL games are good. I'll get Stanley Cup. It's 3D, Ian. This will be great. It's not great. It plays slow. It's like you're walking on the ice, not actually skating. And each game takes forever. And plus, the scoring is entirely random. And I know you can say, well, Pat, the scoring is kind of random. Yeah, but I can like do a slap shot 20 times from the point, and maybe they'll go in 1 out of 20 times. But like, I don't feel like I scored the goal, if that makes sense. Like, sure. I don't feel like I'm scoring the goals in that game.
You're not doing anything to score the goal. You're pressing a button that says randomly tell me if I get a point or not.
Yes. It didn't seem like you're aiming in that game, and you don't tell, okay, the puck just flies past the goalie. Like in NHL, if like you go to the left or right of the goalie and the goalie's not there, it's probably in the goal because the goalie's not there. In this game, well, just shoot it and it goes through the goalie, kind of. Like, I played a full season of that game, and it was like crawling through fucking broken glass to play a full season of NHL Stanley Cup. That was a huge like that. Then I went from that to buying the CD-ROM NHL 95, which was great because that was like, well, fuck the consoles. You get create a player and full trades, nothing you can get at the consoles for Genesis and Super. And that was like that sort of like redeemed my experience of like computer NHL games was that, or computer/console games was that experience. And then winning the MVP with Brian Leach, of course, for sure. So yeah, those are ones that top my list there. You leave out anything or
Hudson Hawk?
I thought you enjoyed that game.
I did, but that's one that I did not like it when I got it, and then played it enough to get to the point where I started to enjoy aspects of it. And now, I don't think it's the worst game in the world. It's got some neat stuff in it.
Okay, that versus Tom Sawyer. Mentions Tom Sawyer. What?
Tom Sawyer's the better game.
Oh wow, without because the gameplay is better and the story.
I mean, Tom Sawyer's not a great game, but it is a competent game. It's a competent game that you can play. Whereas Hudson Hawk definitely has some control issues and stuff like that.
I was trying to think, was there any popular game that I forced myself to like? No, I never liked Mega Man to begin with. I guess okay. I forced myself to like Akari Warriors because it was one of the first NES games I got, and I loved the arcade. That's a horrible game.
But the first one on Nintendo, it's miserable.
Yeah,
it's absolutely miserable.
But here's the thing: when you're a kid and you only have 3 games to play, you got to play the game. You got to pop it in. You can't just play Spy Hunter over and over again, hoping there's an ending to it, or Super Mario Brothers. So like, and plus again, I love the arcade game. So that I would even say like even Commando, the DOS Commando, which is not technically as fine tuned as even a crappy port of Akari Warriors, I enjoyed that game a lot more than legitimately even as 6 years old enjoyed Commando more than Akari Warriors on the NES. Like whatever it was, a year and a half later.
I believe it.
Like absolutely, it's legitimately a better game and port even with freaking 4 colors. It's a better game than that. All right. Well, thanks for the CU podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for
the voting. I guess.
Thanks for voting.
If you want to vote, CU podcast Patreon, patreon.com/CU podcast. I just pulled an E in there. I reversed it.